Hello and welcome to another First Chapter Friday. This is a holiday edition, so I'm sitting here, I'm in front of the tree, I've got the fireplace going in the back. It actually is kind of cool here where I am. I don't know about where you are, but the story I picked today I was kind of excited about. It's called Tru and Nelle, A Christmas Tale. Now, I'm not familiar with the Tru and Nelle series, but apparently this is a sequel to the first one that came out. And this one, the reason I chose it was because it was set in Alabama. And if you don't know, I'm also in Alabama as well. So I thought this would be a fun one to visit. Now, so I'm going to read part of chapter 1 to you. This book doesn't have a lot of chapters, but it does have longer chapters. And I don't want to give away too much of the book because I want you to find it out for yourself to see if it's one you would like to do. Tru and Nelle, A Christmas Tale. 10 days before Christmas, 1935. Surprise visit. "Do you think he'll be any taller?" asked Big Boy. Nell squinted into the hot Alabama sun. It was a balmy 78 degrees in December. So much for a white Christmas. They'd been standing on the side of the red dirt road from Montgomery for more than an hour. The only sign of life was the buzzards circling overhead. "Nah, I reckon he'll still be a shrimp," she answered. Big Boy took off his glasses and wiped the dust from them with his shirt sleeve. "Maybe he'll be all fancy in big city now," he said absent-mindedly. Nell looked at him like he was crazy. "You remember that white suit he used to wear all the time? I think he was the only boy in Monroeville who even had a suit." Nell was the kind of 10-year-old girl who wouldn't be called dead in a dress. She wore her usual tomboy outfit, beat-up overalls and white t-shirt with bare feet. Heck, it couldn't be more highfalutin in Big City if he tried, she added, spitting into the dirt and watching it turn burgundy. Big Boy was a farmer's boy. No matter how many baths he took, he always smelled like cows. Something the girls never let him forget. Despite his nickname, he was not overly big for an 11-year-old. A red cloud rising from the horizon caught his eye. They stood and stared at the gathering cloud as it grew closer. It took a few seconds before they could see a black speck causing the red tornado of dust. A minute later, the black speck became a big, fancy, black convertible. "Finally," said Big Boy. The closer it came, the faster Nell's heart seemed to beat. It had been over 2 years since their best friend, Truman, had been ripped from their lives. In the beginning, it seemed like she'd gotten a letter from him at least once a week. Stories about high society life in New York, the endless parties, sightseeings of famous writers and actors, and skyscrapers tall enough to touch the sun. Then, as winter gave way to spring, and another fall and winter passed, the stories grew shorter and shorter until they tapered off altogether. She had not heard a peep from him for the past 5 months. That is, until his older cousin Jenny received a telegram saying he and his mother and stepdad were suddenly coming down to town for the holidays. "Maybe we should call him Sherlock, for old time's sake," asked Big Boy. Nell broke into a smile, but it quickly faded. Truman was 11 and had been going to some expensive private school. He was sure to be different. Maybe he wouldn't even remember them. Maybe he'd forgotten all the adventures they'd shared or even the mysteries they'd solved together. The car came up on him fast. As at the wheel was a dark-skinned man in a fancy tan suit smoking a fat cigar. A woman was asleep in the passenger seat. "Is that them?" asked Big Boy, excited. A horn blasted, sending Nell and Big Boy scrambling to the side of the road. As the car flew past, Nell caught a glimpse of someone in the back seat, slumped out of sight, his white blonde hair blowing in the wind. They were swallowed up in a tailwind of dust. "Come on," Nell spat, as they gathered their bikes and followed in the car's wake. The automobile eluded them, but Monroeville was just a dusty old hamlet and not so big that they couldn't spot a fancy car like that. As Nell and Big Boy rode through the town square, shopkeepers were just putting up their Christmas decorations, which was always a funny sight, given that Monroeville Christmas was never like the snowy ones in the picture shows. A winter heat wave was not uncommon in these parts. Maybe we should stop and get him a Christmas present for him, suggested Big Boy. First, we need to find out why he's really here. Something smells fishy to me, said Nell. In front of the hardware store, Nell spotted Mr. Barnett, who had a wooden leg, holding a plastic snowman and staring off down the road. She followed his gaze right to the fancy car, which was parked smack dab in front of A.C. Lee's office. Nell and Big Boy ditched their bikes by one of the grand oak trees that ran down the center of Alabama Avenue. They made their way through a small group of gawkers surrounding the convertible. Truman was not in the back seat, but somebody had filled in the New York Times crossword puzzle with the scribbled scrawl of a child. Nell gazed up at the second-floor window of her father's office. Do you think? Big Boy shrugged. There was only one way to find out. They tore up the stairs as quietly as they could, pausing in front of the second-floor office door on which was etched these words: Amantha Coleman Lee, lawyer, legislator, financial manager, editor at large. Instead of knocking, Nell motioned Big Boy toward an unmarked side door, which led to a storage room filled with boxes and cleaning supplies. What are we doing here? Whispered Big Boy. She shushed him and closed the door behind him. They stood in the dark except for a crack of light that emanated from another door in the back of the room. Nell headed for the light. That's A.C.'s office, she whispered. They tiptoed forward until a voice stopped them dead in their tracks. Who does he think he is? Shouted a woman. To do this around the holidays? That is so typical of him, ruining it for everyone. Nell looked at Big Boy. That was Truman's mother, Lily Mae, talking. Nina, don't let him upset you so, said a thickly accented male voice. Nina, whispered Big Boy. Nell shushed him again so he could hear. Me corazon, he cannot win. He cannot, said the man. Isn't that right, Mr. A.C.? Is that Tru's dad? I mean stepdad. What's his name? Cuban Joe? Asked Big Boy. And who's he talking about? There was a pause. Nell could hear the light tapping. A.C. always tapped a small pocket knife against a table whenever he was thinking. Her father spoke slowly and deliberately. Nothing is ever certain in this world, but a wounded and cornered animal should never be underestimated. Then what should we do about a rabid dog? Hissed Nina. You put him out of his misery? Nina, mi amor, cried Joe. I sympathize with your ex-husband. He is wounded because he lost the battle for your heart. Don't you see that all he can do is try to get you back? Oi, listen to me. Desperate men do desperate things. His only resort is to take our Truman away from us. Nell took a step back and bumped into a box that had an old lamp sitting on top of it. She turned just in time to see the lamp teeter on the edge, and before she could grab it, crash! What was that? Said Joe. There was a creak of a chair, the sound of footsteps on the wooden floor, and the rattling of the door handle. Nell and Big Boy stood frozen like deer in the headlights. The door swung open and the silhouette of A.C. Lee towered over them. And if you want to find out what happened next, you'll have to read the book for yourself. Tru and Nelle, A Christmas Tale. Hope you have a wonderful holiday season, and I hope you enjoy some good books too.